Okay, because some of the judges can't disclose how they voted because of particular employment things to do with working for the governments that they reside in and so on and so forth, I will not name where any particular judges fell. I will only give the call as it happened technically and then also my own opinion insofar as I can. First of all, what we do is we look over our notes like you would do for normal in-round adjudications, and then you go around the table and ask if people have a particular inclination to who comes first, or if they have a particular discussion they want to have, or a team that they consider to be out, or any variety of the following, or of the previous even. We do not rank the teams per se because first, second, third, fourth is not important. Only the team that wins is important. Originally, a lot of people cut out second government, although all teams were discussed, and then also first opposition, and thought that it was a long diagonal discussion. The first vote that we call... I'll get onto that in 1 second, because the first vote was a 5-2 split towards second opposition rather than to first proposition, with 2 judges, including myself, having first proposition, our inclination being in that direction. The reason why we cut out second government is that we felt that the argumentation didn't lend itself to a realistic interpretation of the Catholic Church. We agreed with the rebuttal that that was a Protestant argument to make and not one that the believers of the Catholic Church would buy into or use to interpret. So we didn't feel that it connected with the real world in a meaningful way. In terms of first opposition, and this is where the opposition discussion comes in, and we did discuss both opposition teams, is there were questions about how new the extension was in second opposition. So they deepened a lot of analysis on things like rituals, why the Pope has a particular authority, which although the first opposition touched upon, they did not substantiate it so much that it became impactful in the debate, whereas it did for second opposition. So that's where that fell on that discussion. In terms of the long diagonal discussion, it came down to some particular questions. First question that we asked was, in terms of their point about electing the Pope would mean that it was they were no longer a legitimate leader. In terms of their ability to be the mouthpiece of God on earth, we didn't find that they had proven why, just because they were elected, they could no longer be that mouthpiece, particularly when they had outlined that other members of the Catholic Church, including all priests, act as interlocutors, and equally cardinals can do that as well. The second question that we asked where there was a problem was the idea... Now, I'm going to go actually this from a slightly different angle. In terms of what first proposition said, there was a problem in that their mechanism was not very explicit. What was implicit within their speech was that this was a policy that would be implemented by the cardinals. At the point of a pope's death or stepping down, they are the next highest authority in the Catholic Church. This was agreed upon by all teams within the debate. Now, although that mechanism wasn't clearly outlined enough for it to be a more obvious win on that basis, because that mechanism wasn't challenged by any of the other teams in terms of who would be implementing the policy of elections, we felt as a group that it was likely that it was the cardinals that would be doing this, and therefore the idea of ritual in terms of who's given the authority and legitimacy to hand out ritual were the cardinals, who would then make elections a new ritual. This was another question that we asked a lot, like, did the opposition ever show that elections could not become a new ritual? There was a wash in terms of examples when we discussed this, because we felt both sides gave kind of balancing amounts, equal amounts, that's the word I want, equal amounts of examples and analysis behind those examples as to why this might cause them to be more legitimate or less legitimate, or why it might cause divisions within the church. However, we felt, or 5 of us felt, that first proposition were willing to have some people leave the Catholic Church if it meant that the rest of them could be more connected to that religion. So we felt that that was something that second opposition could have done more on, particularly as those points from first proposition were were already on the table. This was the next discussion we had, was we wanted to ask ourselves and kind of consciously assess whether we were placing too high a burden on first proposition to respond to the points given by second opposition, considering that time is a thing, that their speeches do not follow each other, and that the only opportunity they have to engage with those arguments is through points of information, of which they had 2 in the second opposition team as a whole. While some judges did feel that they should have done better to answer those points because, as we said, in terms of questioning how much of an extension second opposition gave, they felt that those points had already been implicitly given by first opposition in some cases and explicitly in others, and that first proposition should have done a better job of refuting those to the point that they would have additionally refuted the arguments given by second opposition. Other members of the panel did not believe that that was a reasonable burden to place on them as it stood, and that they did a good enough job. In addition, because they didn't feel that second opposition had done enough to prove that the authority of the cardinals in creating a new ritual would not be understood or taken on board by at least the majority of the Catholic community, that became a bit of a problem for them, particularly when first proposition had stated that there were problems with distrust in the authority figures. Now, partially, we gave a larger weight to that than the amount that it was mentioned in the debate had, because of our position as reasonable, intelligent observers, as judges. It is reasonable for us to sit there and go, we know, existing in the world, that there are many people questioning the authority structures within the Catholic Church due to child sex scandals and so on. And although they weren't explicitly discussed extensively within the debate, they were referred to at several points in time, and so that became quite impactful upon the discussion as well. As you can tell, that was a very thorough discussion. A lot of it came down to how we weight importance to certain aspects of judging. This is where we can see that judging can be subjective also. So it's very important to note that we saw that there were criticisms and ways to improve, even for the team that won, that would have made it a more obvious win for the other judges and indeed those who still voted for them. So I hope that that clarifies our call and why we took that one, and also why the dissenting judges also made the decisions that they did.